Hi, welcome back. I'm Ellen Siegel, social worker, uh, a spiritualist, spiritual coach, life problem solver, spiritual enthusiast for myself. And here today with my dear friend Michael Rosenbaum and
And
colleague.
let me just add, beautiful soul. I've known
Uh,
Ellen for a long time,
well, takes one to know one.
probably other lifetimes too. So, I'm Michael Rosenbaum. I'm a hypnotherapist, a spiritual development coach. Um, I help people not not let their past run them. How to
Mm,
let go of past patterns and ways of thinking that have been downloaded into us through our own experience, our culture, uh, and how to discover and release that and then build something new in your life. And part of building something new, I think that's really valuable, is knowing who you are as a spiritual being, which is has much more wisdom than our normal everyday self that we call our ego self.
that's a great way to put it. And today we're talking about how to find meaning in difficult situations. And we each have had experience with this. Um, and it could be subtle experiences or very traumatic things. We as children uh, often feel many traumatic things, just when an adult raises their voice, um, even a teacher in a classroom reprimanding the kid next to you, you get to go like this. Um, Things with siblings, uh, and just conclusions that you draw about yourself as a child in response to things that are happening, just general things that are happening. And we have a few examples of challenging situations and and sort of an approach to take when you're faced with things, and those of us who are facilitating our own growth, looking back over our lives, um, trying to make meaning out of what we've seen, what we've experienced. And very often, many people could be familiar with having just learned different, have new awarenesses just by coming through difficult situations. In addition to that, when you really focus in on what the meaning is, what the lessons could be, um, and even could I have participated in creating it as a learning experience for myself? When you start to change your orientation to sort of an educational one, things shift quite a bit. So my
Absolutely, absolutely. As we were chatting prior to this talk, I was reminded of something that a friend of mine, an associate of mine who was a doctor who then moved into more alternative ways of healing. And we used to teach classes together at one point in our lives. And he had this great saying, which is very apropos to what we're going to talk about today, which is when something happens to you, especially a difficult situation, an uncomfortable situation, even a life-threatening situation, instead of saying, oh, why did this happen? And what did I do wrong? Or blaming somebody else. These are the normal ways that we have been taught to approach these. He said, ask yourself the question, what can I learn from this situation? And he thought that was the only intelligent question you could ask in those situations. And I just think that's brilliant. And we're going to talk about a few things that illustrate that point. So, do you want me
Well,
to talk a little bit about my experience? Do you want to put it go in?
either one, go ahead.
Well,
Share
let me
one and
say
then
one
I'll.
thing. This was really dramatic, but had a dramatic positive effect out of the negative effect. So this was when I was a young person, around 20, 21, somewhere in that range. And I met someone, I met a young woman, and we decided to get engaged. And so about 2 months before the actual wedding, and we had planned the wedding, we had told our parents, we had made arrangements and everything. She broke the engagement off. I was completely devastated. I did not see that coming. And it really threw me for a loop. I would say that was the darkest place I've ever been in my life up to that point, really, probably my whole life. And I walked around in a daze, probably for about a year. I just didn't know what to do with this. I had at the time, I don't think I had good self-esteem anyhow. Well, this made it way lower. And what's wrong with me? And I hadn't found my place in life. I didn't know what to do. It just was spiraling down. And I remember, going through that difficult situation. But it also spurred something in me to want to get out of it. Now, I didn't know how to get out of it,
Mm,
but I knew I needed to get out of this. This isn't me, or this seems so wrong, and I need to let go of this. I need to move on, and so on. So what happened was that, I started dating again after a while, and I met this woman. It was a blind date. It shows you where I was. But, and I did, we didn't really hit it off that well romantically, but she was a big talker and she kept going on and on about this self-help group that she had found called EST, which was short for Earhart Seminars Training. Anyway, she was like bonkers about it. It was like this greatest thing, but she had never done it. She actually had never done it, but she'd heard about it and she was very taken by it. So I said, okay. So we had our date together. We, split our ways and we didn't have another date. But I remembered that what she had talked about. So I started looking to see if where was that in our area. And I attended, like a little intro class. They call it a guest seminar, and the guy was delivering it I really liked, and so on. And I invited my friend, my male buddy, to come with me to see this. We both liked it. And so we signed up for the course. It was a 2-weekend course. I had never done anything quite like that before. Anyway, when I look back on this, that was the beginning of my spiritual path,
mm,
taking that course. And the course was not particularly spiritual. I mean, we didn't
mm,
meditate, we didn't talk about spirituality or anything. But what it did for me was it allowed me to see
mm,
a problem that I was blinded to, that I didn't see about myself. Because up to that point, and what kind of got me into trouble with this whole thing with this woman and the engagement being broken off was that I valued other people's opinions above my opinion.
mm,
I looked to others for my good feeling. If they thought I was doing a good job, then I could feel good. It wasn't whether I thought I was doing a good job, was what did they think? And I also avoided conflict at all costs. And that was from my upbringing, having a very confrontational father. So that was, anyway, this training that I took at the end of it, it totally transformed that consciousness in me where I realized that it was okay if somebody disagreed with me. I didn't have to try to convince them. I didn't have to walk away from it. We could agree to disagree. There could be two separate opinions in the room. It was all right. We didn't, either of us had to change it. That was a big epiphany for me. And that was a big opening. Had I not had that really dark experience in my life, I don't think I would have pursued this kind of thing. I don't think I would have been desperate enough to try to find something to right this problem. And if I ask myself the question, if that never happened, would have I discovered something like this? I don't know. Maybe not. So in a way, it was a real blessing in disguise that literally led me down. I can look at that as the beginning of my whole spiritual path. So, like my friend said, what can I learn from this situation? Now, I would never wish that situation on myself. Who wants that, right? But on the other hand, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my life.
So great.
There you have it.
So great to be able to look back, because when you're in the midst of it, it doesn't feel so good when it's happening. And I mean, I can just share about my own like a desperate feeling inside. When I was 18, my father had a heart attack on a Friday, and he died the following Monday. And he was a very vital person who I admired and looked up to. And I would say I probably had about the maturity of an 11-year-old. I mean, I adored my father. I idolized him. He was a mentor to me. And, maybe he would disagree that I had more maturity than that. And the agony, it was like agony. It was like heart agony. And I did everything I could to be involved in things. That I had a boyfriend. I really couldn't be present with my mother's emotional pain. I had a younger sister. I mean, I was helpful, in practical matters, but I was like a mess, agony. I dropped out of college. That was like right my freshman first semester. And I would say I went a long life, and I did go back and finish school with the help of some friends, and then I started to. I don't know if this happened before I went to but I think I went to start to go to social work school, and the school I went to, in like the first class, one of the teacher asked everyone, why have you come, to take a master's in social work? And people were answering, I want to help people, I want to give back, and things like that. And she just would not take this answer from anybody. She said, there's one reason you have come to social work school, and that's to heal yourself. I don't know if that would fly in social work school today, but, was she talking to me? And so, okay, so that idea was implanted in my head. And then a few years after that, I had a friend who went to some workshops in Manhattan called Let Go and Live. And she was over at my house one day. And I said to her, I said, listen, I miss my dad so much. It was like 10 years after he passed. And I said, I feel like I never had an adult relationship with him. I felt like I was, like about 11 years old in maturity. She said, well, I just learned a process. Now, I never went to a workshop. I never did a meditation. I never heard of guided imagery, nothing. She said, do you trust me? She's my friend for a long time. I said, sure. She says, close your eyes and hold my hand. And she said, now create an inner garden that's a safe place inside yourself. And then she said, talk about life changing like you. She said, now see your father come through the gate into the, garden and, and tell him, oh, well, I was furious. I didn't know what was going to come out. How could you leave me with mommy? And we were having such a good time and you were so much fun. Where the hell did you go? And she said, and now hear him respond. So he says, oh, it was great. You were a great daughter. We had a great family. We had a lot of fun, only I got called to business elsewhere. And then he says, and listen, I gave you everything you need to know in this lifetime. So he says, and you could call me back anytime, and I gotta go. That's what he says, I gotta go. So, and he leaves. And my life has changed forever, from something a friend got at a personal growth workshop, which of course I signed up for every class that they had at Let Go and Live. And while it wasn't spiritual, it was very spiritual. And it was all about accepting yourself and actually, it was the first time in those workshops I got introduced to victim consciousness. And they said there are certain professions that are attracted to victim consciousness and certain cultural groups. And I fit both of them. And I thought I was good. Well, I fit two of many that they said, but I felt like I was going to fall over. So something had happened that I was open to truth. I was open to truth. There was something that had opened in me. And then that's when I first heard, just ask for anything you don't like. What is the lesson in this for me? And like you said, I wouldn't wish any of these things on anyone. And I wouldn't think that I would choose this for myself. Yet, as we've learned in our spiritual path, that there's an orientation to consider. I mean, some of us believe it wholeheartedly, which I do. A person just needs to consider it and try it on. And that would be the idea of pre-birth planning, that this is a school and that we might choose the curriculum. I mean, that seems very far-fetched when you're deep in depression and have uncontrollable anxiety and, are frantic in one way or another. So what were some of the things that you learned, and I'll share some too, from looking back in the experience that you navigated through and what would be the word? It's like got a larger vantage point so that you could see what the lessons were, that you could that there are certain characteristics and aspects of yourself that you got to develop having gone through that.
Well, I would say that, besides learning to honor my own feelings, I became involved with that organization
Mm,
and I began actually work for them for a year. And then I left, but I was teaching seminars, not the original seminar, but they had other programs. And when I left and went back into the world, I happened to meet up with somebody who was in one of my seminars who was actually a therapist, and he introduced me to meditation.
mm,
I'd never, I don't even know if I heard of it, but maybe I heard of it, but I never did it. And he thought that was really important. So
mm,
he taught me, I don't even remember what the meditation process was that he taught me, but he turned me on to the idea of meditation. So that really began to move me in a spiritual direction. And then he said, as I began to do it and enjoy it, he says, the best way to deepen your meditation is to teach it.
mm,
So, really? I never would have thought of that. So I began teaching meditation. Well, that made me begin to discover other kinds of meditations and began to have my own experience where I could share it. And that kind of led me in that direction, you know, to teach meditation. And meditation began to become important for me. And out of my meditation experiences, new things began to emerge.
mm, mm,
So I had I think I've told you this story in the past, but I was looking around, I was looking to learn new techniques and things, and I heard somebody on the radio who was from the East, and he had a center in New York City, where I lived at the time. And he was actually, his talk was on sound healing. He uses sound to heal in some way. And that interested me. So I studied with him, but he had his own meditation process, which he taught me. And so I was doing that. And one morning when I went to meditate and do my usual ritual of whatever I was taught, I heard a voice that wasn't my voice.
mm,
It wasn't like an outside voice, it was thoughts, but they were clear and they were in a different voice than my normal thoughts were. And the voice said, "Why don't you try this for meditation today?" So imagine there you are, you're sitting down,
mm.
you've been meditating a particular style for months with this mentor, this teacher who you honor, and you've having an okay experience. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was nothing out of the usual. And then I hear this voice. So I didn't know what to make of it, but I thought I was curious. So I said, "What do you mean?" I think back. What do what? And so I got this voice back that said, "Why don't you imagine you could put your attention down at the center of the earth
Mm,
somehow, and there's a line of light or energy that comes from the center of the earth. Imagine it coming through the center of your body and out the top of your head into space." That's the meditation focus. That's it. So I'm thinking, well, that seems pretty simplistic. I thought I was doing something more advanced with
mm,
whatever I was taught. This seemed, it was almost laughable in a way
mm.
from a ego point of view.
Right.
But if I heard that voice I might as well do it because, I'm curious. And then I can go back to doing what I normally do.
Mm,
But when I did that little visualization, which really only took a minute or so, right? I felt this burst of energy move through my body, unlike anything. I mean, not even remotely like anything I ever experienced before. And it was wonderful. And I said, whoa, what was that? This is way more interesting than what I used to be doing.
mm.
So I gave up what I used to be doing and I did that. And then a week later, the voice came back and gave me something else. Another simplistic
Great.
thing. Wow, this is really fun. I shared it with my wife. And so she had the idea that why don't you think you could ask whoever this voice is a question? I said, I don't know. I never even thought of that. So I ask a question. I get an interesting answer, what I think is an interesting answer.
Mm,
Then I started to get enough information. I said, I better write this down. And that started a whole development
wow.
again in my spiritual. And you know me,
Mm,
I get all these
mm,
downloads now, but that was the beginning of that. That was the
wow.
beginning of that. But the thread that I think is really interesting in these stories is that um, all I did really was pay attention to what was coming to me.
Mm,
These did not feel like my original ideas. So even when I had that, my fiance leaving me and so on, and I met somebody who told me about this thing, that wasn't something I discovered on my own.
right.
Someone came to me and told me about it. Now, I listened to that and I pursued it, and it led to this great thing. And then when I left that organization and went back into, I was a commercial artist, and as it turned out, the just think of the coincidence of all this. So it turned out the person I was working for, his girlfriend knew this therapist who was in my seminar at this
Wow.
organization who wanted to meet me. I didn't pursue that person. They pursued me. So I met him and he taught me about meditation. I didn't know anything about
It's so
meditation.
great. The whole idea of paying attention and that it's almost like stepping stones are there.
Right. If you can pay attention and
It's
listen to them.
like,
And
what,
and then so then when I heard this voice, right, it led me there. So I'll take it one more level just to show you how that worked, to the audience to hear how that could work for you.
mm,
So
mm,
so so I got to be, pretty good at hearing this voice and it guiding me in different ways, and I was really enjoying it. I didn't think much of it, although my internal experience was powerful when I heard that voice.
mm,
And we met some people. I think it was really trying to remember. I don't remember how we met them. It was at a potluck somewhere. I don't know. But I started chatting with them. They were meditators also, as a couple. And I happened to mention that, I'd hear this voice and it would give me some information. And she says, oh, so do I. And he said, yeah, so do I. I said, I can't believe that. That's amazing. The coincidence that I would bump into two other people that were having the same
mm,
experience.
mm,
And so I said, so an idea came to me. I said, oh, why don't we meditate together
mm,
and get messages for each other? I thought that would be a lot of fun. So we did that like once a week. We'd meditate for an hour, but what we did was we'd go into meditation and if somebody got a message for somebody, they would just say it out loud.
mm,
So we round robin, and it was a ball. But what I noticed was that in the group, it was even stronger.
mm,
And my whole body would get really hot when I was in that group and we were giving messages to each other, and my hands would kind of get hot and tingle. So my friend then says to me, maybe you ought to think about um, energy healing.
Mm.
And I said, what's that? I never even heard of that. What what do you mean energy healing? What the heck is that? Now, this is back in the 80s, right? So
Right.
it's a while ago. And so she began to explain to me, and she says, you know what? Read this book. It's all about energy healing and see what you think. And it was a book by a woman named Barbara Brennan. And it was a big, thick book about, she was an energy healer, and it was very detailed about her process. I loved the book. And so that led me to study with Barbara Brennan. So you see how it just keeps going.
Just following one invitation
Right,
from another.
right, right. So,
Mm.
um, and it started with, I don't know that I would have been able to hear or follow any of those
Mm.
invitations
Mm.
had I not had that original experience. And that really started my spiritual journey.
Mm. Mm.
So, to the audience, to people listening, think about your life and think about the challenges in your life, things that you would not wish on anybody, right? A disease, you lost your job,
Right.
you got divorced, you got a car accident, whatever. And ask yourself the question, well, what did I learn? What did this force me to look at or learn because of that difficult situation?
Very often, I know, like with illness, and even somebody leaving you, in a breakup, whether it's you recognize that you can navigate through a difficult situation, or that there's some kind of we were talking before, silver lining, like in some ways you feel relieved, even though, and you didn't think you might feel relieved, because you had your heart set on something, or that you can learn that having your heart set on something, all of a sudden something materialistic doesn't matter the same way. You brought up a really good one about recognizing to honor one's own feelings. Um, and, you know, in that, I always questioned this. I wasn't sure of, and it didn't really matter where the voice came from, but like in the Be Happy, No Matter What book, talks about like an innate inner voice, an innate wise self, or the healthy parent, things that we learned about and help people develop or discover in the hypnotherapy process. Very often, I mean, I remember as a child getting inner direction from some voice inside me, whether it was, look in this direction, brush your teeth now, don't say that. I was going to say something, that might get me in trouble.
Right.
Don't say that right now. Some kind of thing like that. And then later on, for myself, through the process that I was led through in honoring the feelings and things like that, was really to recognize that we each have at least that. There may be other channeled beings and other wisdom that comes to us, once we really own we're on a spiritual path. And, if that's not what our listeners might be up to yet, or have not noticed in themselves, that very often they would you can get a direction inside and then just ignore it. And
Right.
you know, and when you start to follow it, and it could be making, sometimes I have a client who does not consider themselves spiritual at all. And so I said, well, you know, like, did you ever make a big purchase? You know, should I buy this? Should I buy that? And you deliberate, deliberate, deliberate. The one that makes the voice that makes that, where you hear that final decision, I said, that's your inner voice. So see what else you're deciding and really sit with, you know, whether it's handling a situation a particular way, waiting for wise words that are nurturing when you are confronting someone else. So you have some kind of a chance to have what you're going to say heard. And so you can at least start with noticing inside yourself. And some people say as they follow that voice, it never leads them wrong. So, you know, that's something, you know, another avenue to be open to wisdom.
And you can cultivate that.
Yes.
So that's something I do with clients all the time is everybody has that wisdom. I call it your higher self,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
that's just a word. But
Right.
you can do a process. You can begin to get acquainted with allowing that wisdom to flow through more easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never met anybody that couldn't do that.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah.
So that's great.
One other thing I want to mention is there's a great book that a friend of mine told me about many years ago called The Shack. I don't know
Mm.
if you've read that or not. It's kind of it's a little religious based, a little Christian based, but there's a great message in it. And I'm not Christian, but I love the message. And they don't talk about it in religious terms, but it's a person who has something really
Mm.
horrific and difficult happen in his life. He gives up all hope and he's really angry with God. And then this thing happens and he ends up being led to a shack. And the shack transforms and he ends up, for most of the book, he's having a conversation with God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost. So
Mm.
those images, right? But the thing that I remember that one of them said in the book, which I thought was really great, was that they said, "Hey, listen, it doesn't matter what you do in life and how you distort things or whatever you do, whatever difficulties you get yourself into, we know how to help you get the lesson out of it, how to help you move forward, because life's about evolution and moving forward.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter. It's never hopeless. It doesn't matter what happens. We can help you evolve from it and learn from it." I thought that was really wise.
I think that's beautiful because so often people feel like they're a victim of what's happening. And I like to think about it is you may be a victim. It doesn't mean you need to carry victim consciousness going forward because that keeps you from evolving. And you know, to see what the lessons are and what strengths you get to see in yourself that you know that you weren't seeing before that you can build on
Yeah.
and listen, I still miss my dad. It's a very long time ago, and he's been a great teacher in that I was really left I was really left with myself. That turns out to be a very positive thing, as I was definitely distracted by his support.
Mm.
I was so distracted by his support and addicted to his support. And I would not have, I just know that because even when my husband and I got married, um, which was a number of years after that, I had the thought, like, how would I have ever been able to walk down the aisle with my father giving me away to someone else? I mean, just the fact that I had that thought meant that there was an addiction there, that I wouldn't be able to develop a relationship with another man while I was idolizing and attached to him. He was charismatic in a delightful way. He loved to dance, he loved to sing. We played music together, had a lot of fun. And I even chose to not go away to school because I didn't want to miss out on. So that was not healthy development. That
Yeah.
was not healthy development. It was a lot of fun, but what can I say? So, and I know with the my appreciation of pre-birth planning that we came together for that. And I always liked the idea. I don't know where I got this, that we wait on a long line, maybe 1,000 years, to come in for particular parents who choose to help us with lessons, who are we're the right fit for them, and that to get an earth life is a gift. And so many of us are embroiled in misery, not really experiencing it as the gift, a gift of learning. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So let me just sum up what we've been talking about a little bit. Two things that seem to come out of this conversation. One is look for the learning, especially in difficult situations, um, and use it as a way to evolve, because everything can be used to evolve. In difficult situations, I've seen it in my own clients who've had illnesses and things like that, that it can be used as a stepping stone for to get unattached to something that's you don't realize is dragging you down. And the other thing is to be a good listener, to
mm,
listen to the messages or things that come to you. They don't necessarily have to be so dramatic. And I remember once in my training with Barbara Brennan, she made this statement, which I never forgot. She said, you know, your body is always telling you what's right and what's wrong for you, but very few people listen.
mm,
They don't listen until the message gets really loud.
mm,
But if you could hear the small little message before it gets loud, it's guiding you what's right or wrong.
mm,
Whether it's you're doing something physically that's beginning to tax your body, whether you have some feeling inside of you that something's wrong, because your body gives you that message also.
mhm,
You know, you have a little bit of a sick feeling, you get a headache. I mean, there's a lot of little messages that go
mm,
on
mm,
if you're willing to pay attention to it. And but if you wait, the message doesn't go away, but it's something more dramatic has to happen for you to hear the message, for you to wake up.
right. No, it's so true. So true. So, well, this has been great.
Yeah.
So, Michael, for people to find you, how do they find you?
Oh, so the best way to find me is either on my website, which is alternativechoices.org, not .com, .org, alternativechoices.org. You can see some of the work I do, and you can set up a free consult to chat about anything you want, whether it's a problem you're having or spiritual development things you'd like to talk about. I'm open to that. And then this is going on my podcast. We each have our own podcast, and my podcast is called Path to Enlightenment, and you can get it on any podcast station. And also, as you hear, I've been a big meditator for a long time, so I do offer a free meditation class on Zoom every couple of weeks, spiritual meditation. So just contact me and go on my site. There's a contact form. You can contact me with a message, and I'm happy to include you and send you the link to the meditation class.
And I encourage everybody to do that and experience it. And then you'll know about continuing after that. And for me, you can find me at behappynomatterwhat.com. And you can email me at ellen@behappynomatterwhat.com. And there's Be Happy No Matter What book. And there's free contemplative thoughts that you can have dropped in your email every day. It's a few hundred people who get those. That's fun. And also free consultation. And this has been great. And we'll look forward to next time. And the YouTube channel is Enlightening Conversations.
Oh, love that name.
So, all right. Well, thanks.
Okay.
It's been great. We'll see you next time.
Yep.